The 47th floor of Thorne Industries gleamed like a temple to modern excess. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline, reduced to glittering insignificance far below. The marble floors caught and reflected the carefully calibrated lighting, creating an atmosphere of cold perfection. This was Marcus Thorne's domain, and every surface, every angle, every carefully chosen piece of minimalist furniture announced one message. Someone extraordinarily important worked here. Marcus Thorne, a tech billionaire, whose fortune came from a revolutionary data analytics platform he claims to have built from nothing. Tall, impeccably groomed, with silver threading through his dark hair that he considers distinguished rather than aging. He wears custom Italian suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His eyes are cold, calculating, always measuring a person's worth in dollar signs. He moves through spaces as if he owns them, because he usually does. There's a brittleness beneath his polished exterior, a desperate need to prove his superiority that suggests deep insecurity masked by wealth. He stood at those windows now, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of 18-year-old scotch. His reflection in the glass showed a man who had conquered his world and found the view lacking. Behind him, his office spread out like a showroom of achievement. Awards lined up with military precision, framed magazine covers featuring his face, abstract art pieces whose value lay more in their price tags than their beauty. He turned from the window, checking his Patek Philippe watch. 10:30 at night. Most of his employees had fled hours ago, scurrying back to their modest homes and modest lives. But Marcus often stayed late, partly because he had no one waiting for him in his penthouse apartment, partly because he enjoyed the silence of empty halls that belonged entirely to him. The soft sound of wheels on marble caught his attention. He moved to his office door, watching as a janitor's cart appeared at the far end of the corridor. Behind it, moving with unhurried purpose, was John Williams. Marcus had seen him before, of course. You couldn't miss the help, no matter how invisible they tried to make themselves. This particular janitor had worked the night shift for almost 2 years now. Marcus knew because he occasionally reviewed personnel files when he was bored, amused by the small lives documented in human resources folders. John Williams, 52 years old. High school education, previous employment, classified, current salary, barely above minimum wage, single, no family listed. Address, some forgettable apartment in a neighborhood Marcus would never visit. "Still here," Marcus called out, his voice echoing down the pristine hallway. John looked up, his expression neutral. "Just doing my rounds, sir. I can come back if you need privacy." "No, no." Marcus walked into the hallway, suddenly feeling the need for interaction, even with someone like this. The scotch warmed his blood, loosening his tongue. "I'm curious. Do you enjoy it? Pushing that cart around, emptying trash cans, scrubbing toilets?" John resumed his work, spraying cleaner on a glass panel and wiping it down with practiced efficiency. "It's honest work." Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and unkind. "Honest work. That's what people say when they've given up on achieving anything real. Do you know what I was doing at your age? I was revolutionizing data analytics. I was building an empire. I'm aware of your success, Mr. Thorne." John moved to the next panel, his movements steady, unbothered. "Are you?" Marcus leaned against the wall, warming to his subject. The isolation of the late hour, the scotch, and the presence of someone who couldn't fight back made him reckless. "Because looking at you, I see someone who settled. Someone who took the easy path. Push a cart, collect a paycheck, go home. Repeat until you die. Is that really all you aspire to?" John paused in his work but didn't turn around. "Aspirations change over time, Mr. Thorne. What seems important at 20 means something different at 50. That's just rationalization." Marcus finished his scotch, emboldened by what he perceived as victory in this one-sided conversation. "The truth is, some people are leaders and some are followers. Some build empires, others clean them. It's just the natural order of things." Natural order. John finally turned, meeting Marcus's eyes directly. Something in his gaze made Marcus uncomfortable, though he couldn't articulate why. "That's an interesting way to view the world." It's a realistic way to view the world, Marcus countered. I worked hard to get where I am. I sacrificed, I innovated, I refused to settle for mediocrity. That's why I'm standing in a custom suit in my own building while you're wearing polyester and pushing a mop. Your building? John nodded slowly, returning to his cart. He pulled out fresh trash bags, beginning the mundane task of changing the bins along the corridor. Tell me, Mr. Thorne, when you built your empire, did you do it alone? What's that supposed to mean? Simple question. Did you write every line of code? Manufacture every component? Install every piece of infrastructure? John moved methodically from bin to bin. Or did you have help? People like me, maybe, who did the work that seemed beneath your notice? Marcus felt heat rising in his face. I had employees, yes. People I paid well for their services. But the vision was mine. The risk was mine. The genius was mine. Genius. John almost smiled, a sad, knowing expression that infuriated Marcus more than any argument could have. That's a word we use for ourselves when we want to believe we're special. Different from everyone else. Better. I am better, Marcus snapped, his control slipping. That's not arrogance. That's fact. Look at what I've accomplished. What have you done? What mark have you left on the world? The question hung in the air between them. John straightened slowly, his hand unconsciously moving to his collar. For the first time since the conversation began, something shifted in his demeanor. The patience in his eyes hardened into something else. Not anger, but a kind of weary recognition. What mark have I left? John repeated quietly. That's an interesting question, Mr. Thorne. How do you measure a mark? In dollars? In magazine covers? In buildings with your name on them? In legacy, Marcus insisted. In changing the world. Making a difference. Making a difference. John turned away back to his cart, and Marcus thought the conversation was over. But then John spoke again, his voice softer now, carrying something that sounded like memory. I knew a man once who thought like you. Young officer, full of himself. Thought his rank made him better than the enlisted men. Thought his education, his background, his family connections made him special. Marcus frowned, confused by the turn in conversation. What does that have to do with anything? He learned something important. John reached into his cart, pulling out not cleaning supplies but a small, weathered frame that Marcus hadn't noticed before. He learned it in a place called Fallujah. When the mortars started falling, when the bullets started flying, his rank didn't matter. His connections didn't matter. What mattered was the men who had his back, the men he'd looked down on. John set the frame on his cart where Marcus could see it. It was a military photograph, a group of Marines in desert camouflage, younger versions of themselves, standing with that particular pride that comes from shared hardship. Marcus's eyes found John in the photo immediately. He was younger, leaner, wearing sergeant's stripes. But it was his expression that struck Marcus, confident, purposeful, alive in a way the janitor before him seemed deliberately not to be. You were military, Marcus said, his voice suddenly uncertain. Force reconnaissance, John replied. 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. That young officer I mentioned? He's a general now. Sends me Christmas cards, still thanks me for saving his life during that mortar attack. John pulled down his collar slightly, revealing the tattoo that Marcus had never noticed before. It was the eagle, globe, and anchor of the Marine Corps, but surrounding it were other markings, coordinates, dates, names, a memorial worn on skin instead of stone. These are the men I served with, John said quietly. 8 of them didn't come home. 3 more came home broken. And me? I came home trying to figure out what comes after you've seen what I've seen, done what I've done. Marcus stood frozen, his mind racing to recalibrate. The janitor, the nobody, the man he'd been mocking for the last 20 minutes suddenly had depth, had history, had meaning that Marcus's billions couldn't buy. I had offers after I got out, John continued, his voice matter-of-fact. Private security, military consulting, teaching at Quantico, good money, important titles. But I was tired, Mr. Thorne. Tired of fighting, tired of proving myself, tired of the noise. So I found this job. Quiet nights, simple work, time to think, time to remember, Time to find peace in the small things. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't move. Every cutting word he'd spoken in the last half hour echoed back at him, revealing not John's inadequacy, but his own. His accomplishments, so carefully curated and displayed, suddenly seemed hollow next to the quiet dignity of the man before him. John picked up his spray bottle and cloth, returning to the windows. Your mark on the world, Mr. Thorne, it's real. Your company helps businesses optimize their data. That's valuable. But marks come in different forms. Some are loud and public. Some are quiet and personal. The men I served with, the ones who made it home, they have families now, children, lives that wouldn't exist if not for decisions made in seconds that felt like hours. He cleaned another panel, the motion rhythmic and calming. You asked if I enjoy pushing this cart. Honestly, some nights I do. There's meditation in simple work, clarity. No one's shooting at me. No one's dying. I get to watch the sunrise through these windows you're so proud of. I get to go home to an apartment that's mine, sleep in a bed that's safe, wake up the next day and do it again. After where I've been. That's not settling, Mr. Thorne. That's winning. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Pride, perhaps, or the carefully constructed mythology of his own exceptionalism. I didn't know. How could you? John's voice held no anger, only a kind of tired patience. You never asked. You saw a uniform and a cart and made your assumptions. Most people do. It's easier that way, simpler. Everyone in their boxes, everything making sense according to your natural order. I'm sorry. The words felt strange in Marcus's mouth, unfamiliar and awkward. John paused in his work, finally looking at Marcus directly again. I don't need your apology, sir. I need you to learn something. Every person you pass, everyone you dismiss as ordinary or lesser or beneath you, they all have stories. Battles fought, sacrifices made, victories earned in ways that won't ever make a magazine cover. Your empire, your legacy, your mark on the world? It only exists because of thousands of people you'll never know, doing work you'll never see, making choices you'll never appreciate. He returned to his cart, preparing to move on to the next section of hallway. We're all just trying to find our peace, Mr. Thorne. Your way isn't wrong, but it's not the only way. And it certainly doesn't make you better than anyone else. Just different. Just human. Marcus watched John push his cart down the hallway, the soft sound of wheels on marble fading into the distance. He stood alone in his perfect corridor, surrounded by his perfect building, wearing his perfect suit, and felt smaller than he had in years. He returned to his office, but the view from the windows no longer satisfied him. The awards on his walls seemed less impressive. The magazine covers felt performative. He sat at his desk, expensive leather creaking, and saw his empire with new eyes. Built not by his genius alone, but by the collective effort of people whose names he didn't know, whose stories he'd never bothered to learn. The next morning, when Marcus arrived at his office, he found it immaculate as always. On his desk sat a small note written in the steady handwriting. The windows on 47 tell better stories at sunrise. You should try coming in earlier sometime. J.W. Marcus looked out at the city, at the thousands of lights representing thousands of lives, each with their own battles and victories and marks on the world. And for the first time in years, he felt not diminished by that recognition, but connected to something larger than himself. He picked up his phone and called Human Resources. Pull the file for John Williams. Night janitor. I want to know everything. Previous employment, skills, qualifications, and find out if there are other veterans working in service positions throughout the company. As he waited for the information, Marcus understood that the tattoo hadn't revealed John's true identity. It had revealed his own. Not as a self-made genius standing above the masses, but as a man who had confused accumulation with achievement, position with worth, power with purpose. The lesson came not in grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but in the quiet dignity of a man pushing a cart, wearing his history on his skin, finding peace in simple work after serving something greater than himself. True strength, Marcus finally understood, wasn't found in dominance or superiority. It was found in humility, the recognition that everyone you meet carries battles you know nothing about and deserves respect not for what they own or accomplish, but simply for showing up, doing their work, and maintaining their humanity in a world that constantly tests it.